we got something else entirely, a health update from Tyreek Hill that pretty much slams the door shut on any lingering fantasy of him ending up in a Commander's uniform this season. But that's really only half of today's story, because once you rule Tyreek Hill out, the real question becomes obvious: who actually makes sense for this receiver room, and why does it feel like Washington is dragging its feet on the one name that checks every single box? Let's get into it. So here's exactly what Tyreek Hill posted, in his own words, about 10 months removed from a pair of surgeries. He said his left leg, the one he injured, currently has no power in it at all, and that he's working every single day trying to build that strength back one day at a time. No promises, no timeline, just an honest, day-by-day grind. And when you go back and remember what actually happened to that leg, this update makes a lot more sense, even if it's still tough to hear. Back in Week 4 last season against the New York Jets, Tyreek Hill suffered one of the more horrifying injuries you'll see on a football field. He tore his MCL, his PCL, basically every major ligament you can tear in a knee, all in one play. Reports even indicated at the time that doctors weren't sure he'd ever walk normally again, let alone play football. So the fact that he's out there at all, working to get back onto a field, says something about his determination. But determination doesn't rebuild explosiveness on its own. It's also worth remembering just how compressed this recovery timeline actually is when you stack it against injuries of this severity. 10 months removed from a multi-ligament knee reconstruction is still relatively early in the grand scheme of these kinds of recoveries. Plenty of players who've dealt with far less extensive knee damage have needed a full calendar year, sometimes longer, before they're truly playing at their pre-injury explosiveness again. When you're talking about a torn axle, MCL, PCL, and meniscus all at once, the knee essentially had to be rebuilt from the ground up, ligament by ligament. That kind of surgical reconstruction takes time not just to heal physically, but to trust again. A player has to relearn how to plant, cut, and accelerate without hesitation. And that mental trust piece often lags behind the physical healing by months. And here's the brutal reality of it. Tyreek Hill's entire game, his entire NFL identity is built on speed. That's not a nice-to-have part of his skill set, that is the skill set. Take away his ability to explode off that leg, and you're not talking about a slightly diminished version of Tyreek Hill, you're talking about a completely different player, one who can't do the one thing that made him must-watch television for a decade. If he has no power in that leg right now, he doesn't have the speed teams are hoping to get from him, and without that speed, there simply isn't a role for him on an NFL roster this season. That's the brutal math here, and it's not personal, it's just physics. So does that even matter for the Commanders specifically? Here's the thing. I don't actually think Washington was ever seriously chasing Tyreek Hill in the first place. Sure, we know this front office has been out there looking for speed at the receiver position that's been reported directly, and your mind naturally jumps to a name like Tyreek Hill when speed gets mentioned. But even setting the injury aside for a second, Tyreek brings a certain amount of off-field noise with him, and this coaching staff has already shown they're not exactly eager to bring in more of that kind of drama at receiver. Add in the fact that even in a diminished or theoretically healthy state, Tyreek Hill was never going to come cheap. He's a brand name, he knows it. And any team signing him this offseason would have had to pay him like one. So really, this update doesn't change much of anything for Washington specifically. It just officially, permanently removes a name that probably was never realistic to begin with. What it does change is the broader market, because now whatever team out there was holding out hope for a cheap, speed-boosting Tyreek Hill signing has to pivot to Plan B, same as everybody else. So if Tyreek Hill was never really the answer, who is? And should the Commanders even go out and sign somebody else at all? Personally, my answer here hasn't changed. I think this team needs another receiver, and I think that receiver should be Stefon Diggs. I've said this for weeks now, and nothing about this situation has changed my mind. But here's where I have to be honest with you guys. I don't actually think it's going to happen. And that's a really important distinction to make. because wanting something and expecting something are two very different things. Let's talk about why Diggs still makes complete sense on paper, because the case genuinely hasn't gotten any weaker. He's coming off a season where he put up 1,000 yards with the New England Patriots, a team that made a real run deep into the playoffs. That's not empty production on a bad team. That's a proven veteran still delivering at a high level in a meaningful role. Pair him next to Terry McLaurin, and you've got a receiver duo I feel genuinely confident about. Because right now, if we're being completely honest about the state of this receiver room, it's Terry McLaurin, and then it's a whole lot of unproven names. And I really do mean unproven, across the board. Antonio Williams was just drafted. A lot of people are excited about his potential, and maybe rightfully so, but he hasn't played a single professional snap yet. Jaylen Lane is heading into his second year and hasn't established himself as a real difference maker. Luke McCaffrey flashed some promising traits before an injury derailed his season, but he still hasn't put together a full, healthy year of production. Treylon Burks was a former first-round pick, which tells you the talent is real, but talent on a draft card doesn't mean production on the field. And he hasn't delivered that yet either. Demar Brown had one electric flash during a playoff run a couple years back. Genuinely one of the best flashes we've seen from him, but he's never put together a 500-yard season in his career. And Van Jefferson, while a respected veteran presence, had his best football several years ago at this point. So when you strip away the hype and just look at actual proven production, the honest answer is that this room is Terry McLaurin. And then it's a group of guys with upside but no real track record. That's not a knock on any of them individually. Some of them could absolutely take a leap this year, but you can't build a passing offense around hope alone. And this matters even more given everything else this offense has going on this season. This is a team that's already installing a brand new offensive system with a first-time play caller, already asking its quarterback to adjust his game in fundamental ways. Layering a completely unproven receiver room on top of all that other change is a lot to ask in a single offseason. A steady, experienced veteran presence at receiver doesn't just add talent to the depth chart, it removes one major variable from an offense that already has plenty of other things it needs to figure out on the fly this year. And to be clear, bringing in someone like Stefon Diggs isn't about stunting the growth of these younger guys either. If anything, it should help them. Having a veteran of his caliber in the room gives a young player like Antonio Williams somebody to actually learn from on a daily basis. Route details, setting up defensive backs, understanding coverages before the snap. That kind of mentorship is genuinely valuable for a rookie trying to find his footing in this league. And there's no real evidence that adding a strong veteran receiver slows down a young player's development. If anything, it usually speeds it up. Now, what about the financial piece of this? Because that always ends up being part of the conversation. Reports have pegged Diggs in the range of $8 to $12 million on a short-term deal, and Washington has plenty of room to make that work. This isn't a situation where signing him requires gutting the rest of the roster or mortgaging future flexibility. There's enough cap space here to add a proven veteran receiver and still have real financial breathing room left over for the rest of the season. So it's genuinely hard to point to money as the actual roadblock here. So then what about the other names being floated around? Keenan Allen has come up in some reporting as a player the Commanders have checked in on, and honestly, I think that's a swing and a miss if it goes anywhere. Keenan Allen is closing in on 35 years old at this point, and everything about his recent comments and situation suggests he wants to stay out on the West Coast. Likely finishing his career with the Chargers if he plays another season at all. I don't see him wanting to relocate across the country to the East Coast at this stage of his career, and chasing that feels like it would be a real reach for this front office. And then there's Deebo Samuel, another name that's floated around the periphery of these conversations. Look, we've already run this experiment in Washington. We know exactly what Deebo Samuel brings to an offense. He's a gadget piece, a yards-after-catch weapon who thrives on manufactured touches rather than winning as a true downfield route runner. And honestly, I'm done with that experiment. I don't want another gadget receiver in this room. I want a guy who can win on straightforward route concepts, stretch a defense vertically, and give Jayden Daniels a genuine second read he can trust on any given play. That's exactly the profile Stefon Diggs fits, and it's exactly the profile Deebo Samuel doesn't. As for the young, undrafted names getting hyped up around the league this time of year, and there always are a few, I'll be honest, I'm not playing that game again this offseason. We hyped up an undrafted receiver last year around this exact same time, and by the time the season actually started, that player wasn't even on the practice squad, let alone the 53-man roster. I like some of the young, undrafted talent in this year's group, and there's a chance one of them carves out a real role. But I've learned my lesson about getting ahead of myself with training camp buzz on names who haven't proven anything on an NFL field yet. I'd rather be pleasantly surprised than disappointed again. So where does that leave things? Genuinely, I think the Commanders should sign another receiver, and I think it should be Stefon Diggs. But if I'm being completely honest with you guys, instead of just telling you what I want to hear, I don't think it's going to happen. Here's my reasoning. Washington has already moved on from Brandon Ayuk as an option a while back. If this front office genuinely wanted to add a veteran receiver like Diggs right now, logically, it probably would have already happened by this point. Instead, it feels a lot more like the coaching staff wants to actually get into training camp, put pads on, run practices, and see what they've actually got with this current group before committing real money to a veteran addition. Maybe Antonio Williams looks the part immediately. Maybe Luke McCaffrey stays healthy and takes that next step. Or maybe they get a week or two into camp, don't love what they're seeing, and pivot to signing somebody like Diggs anyway once they've gathered more information. Either path is plausible. We'll find out soon enough. And speaking of soon, training camp officially begins tomorrow for the Washington Commanders. Rookies report first, going through physicals and getting fully settled in before padded practices begin. As of right now, it sounds like the entire rookie class has their contracts squared away, which is a nice change of pace. If you remember last year, there was a notable holdout situation with a rookie taking his time to get a deal done before camp. This year, it appears every single rookie is signed, sealed, and ready to go, which means no unnecessary drama to open camp on that front. Expect the usual wave of roster transactions and minor moves as teams across the league finalize things before padded work begins, but nothing that should overshadow the actual on-field storylines once practices kick off. There's also a fun piece of off-season content worth mentioning here, because it says a lot about where this team is mentally heading into the year. There was a commercial shoot recently for a local car dealership, a tradition that's become something of an annual event for several Commanders players over the years. And watching Terry McLaurin at that shoot this time around, all smiles, relaxed, clearly enjoying himself alongside this year's rookie class, it's honestly a striking contrast from where things stood exactly 1 year ago. Remember, this time last summer, Terry McLaurin was in the middle of a very public, very tense contract standoff with the organization. There were pointed comments to the media, visible frustration, a genuinely uncomfortable vibe surrounding the franchise's best offensive player heading into the season. Fast forward 12 months, contract situation resolved, and he's out there smiling for a commercial shoot with the rookie class, clearly comfortable and settled in his role with this franchise. That's not a small thing. That kind of shift in mood from a team's most important veteran leader tends to filter down through an entire locker room, and it's a genuinely encouraging sign heading into a season with plenty of other question marks still floating around this roster. It's a small moment in the grand scheme of an entire season, sure, just a commercial shoot on an otherwise quiet summer day. But these little glimpses behind the curtain often tell you more about a team's internal temperature than any press conference ever could. A frustrated star receiver publicly airing grievances with his front office is the kind of storyline that can quietly poison a locker room for months. A settled, smiling veteran embracing the next wave of young talent coming through the building is the kind of storyline that can quietly hold a locker room together through a long, grinding season. Considering everything else this team is trying to navigate this year, a new offensive system, a first-time coordinator, an unproven receiver room. Having your most respected veteran fully bought in and in a good headspace is worth more than people realize. So, to wrap all of this up, Tyreek Hill is officially permanently out of the conversation, and honestly, he probably never should have been seriously in it to begin with, given his contract price tag and off-field baggage even before the injury. Keenan Allen feels like a stretch given his age and clear preference to stay on the West Coast. Deebo Samuel is a redundant profile this roster has already tried and moved past. And Stefon Diggs remains, in my opinion, the single cleanest, most sensible move still sitting out there on the board. A proven, motivated, cap-friendly veteran who could genuinely elevate this receiver room without disrupting the development of the young talent already here. Whether Washington actually pulls the trigger on that move remains to be seen, and if I had to bet today, I'd lean toward them waiting to see what training camp reveals first. But don't be shocked if a week or two into padded practices, this front office circles back to Diggs' name once they've had a real look at what they've got. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you believe the Commanders end up signing a veteran receiver before the season starts? Or are they truly going to roll with this young, unproven group as currently constructed? And while you're down there, let me know your confidence level in this year's roster heading into camp. I'll be doing a live stream a little later tonight, so make sure you pull up for that if you can. And if you're new here or you've just been quietly enjoying the content, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. We are closing in fast on a really big channel milestone, and every single subscription helps get us there before camp truly kicks off tomorrow. Make sure you also hit that like button on your way out, drop your thoughts below, and I'll see you guys again very soon with more coverage as this Commanders training camp gets underway. Peace out.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.